The words of Torah that we say today. Thank you, as always, to Desi for opening her home, and for everyone to come here. It's nice weather. You could be outside in the park, walking around central London. Come to learn Torah. So we have coming up tomorrow, Lag BaOmer. I think we discussed in previous years, but it's worth repeating, and then we'll get to some Kabbalistic stuff. What exactly are we celebrating? What is Lag BaOmer all about? So if I was to say to you, what are we celebrating on Lag BaOmer, what would you tell me?
When they're coming to stop dying?
The students of Rabbi Akiva stop dying. Right?
Celebration of friendship.
Celebration of friendship. So let's ask a question. How many students Rabbi Akiva have? 24,000. How many died? 24,000. Let's make some bonfires. Everybody's dead. What are we celebrating? Everybody's gone. What exactly is there to celebrate?
That he started straight away.
Well, not about straight away. So what are we celebrating? I think we discussed in previous years, understanding who was Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was the type of person that no matter what happened, he always saw the good. The Gemara tells a famous story. He has a Rebbe Nachum Ish Gamzu, but famous story, he's traveling. Some say he thought that Bar Kochva was, not some say he thought Bar Kochva was Mashiach. He's discussing with Bar Kochva different strategies. Bar Kochva wants to make an alliance with, I think it was Egypt, against the Romans, and Rabbi Akiva said to him, if you are truly Mashiach, you would understand that you don't need to make any alliances. And Bar Kochva says, well, you need to do hishtadlus. And that's the right thing to do strategically. He says, yeah, but Mashiach would understand that Hashem is going to help you win the war. No alliances are necessary. And they had a disagreement. Rabbi Akiva says, okay, you're obviously not Mashiach. He starts traveling with some students, and he comes to a hotel. The hotel says, very sorry, no room, Rabbi. So he says, okay, whatever's meant to be. He goes into the forest, and they build a little fire for some warmth, and this crazy gust of wind, like the thunderstorms we just had, came out of nowhere, blows it out. Not a normal thing. And Rabbi Akiva says to the students, it's all for the good. They have one animal to be able to travel, and this animal out of nowhere, I think a lion comes and eats the animal, not a normal thing. And once again, Rabbi Akiva says, look, it's all meant to be. They had some roosters, some donkeys, whatever it might have been. When they wake up in the morning, they find out that as the Romans were going to fight Bar Kochva, they stopped off at this hotel and they unfortunately massacred and killed everybody. If Rabbi Akiva would have been there, he would have been killed. If they would have seen the fire, they would have came and found him. If they would have heard the donkeys braying and the animals making noise, they would have found them. Everything, everything Hashem does is for the good. And Rabbi Akiva constantly has that attitude. Daf Yomi just finished Masechet Makot. Pretty much anyone who's been to a siyum, quite often it's Masechet Makot. At the end of Masechet Makot, the Gemara tells us Rabbi Akiva lived before, during, and after the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. They're walking, the Chachamim, and they come to Temple Mount. The Gemara says two stories. One before Temple Mount, the one when they got to Temple Mount. Both times, all the rabbis started crying, Rabbi Akiva started laughing. So they said, Rabbi Akiva, why are you laughing? He says, why am I laughing? Why are you crying? Isn't it obvious why we're crying? The holiest of holies, Beit HaMikdash, and now there's animals just walking around over there. Shouldn't cry. He says, that's why I'm laughing. Because there's two prophecies. One prophecy talked about how there's going to be Shualim Yelchu Bo, and another prophecy talks about how there'll be Od Yavu Zkenim Zkenot Varei Yerushalayim. There'll be old men and women walking in the streets of Yerushalayim. And whenever I go in the old city, I said to my son this summer, see, this is it. This is the prophecy. This is the end of Gemara Makot. You have old men and women, you have kids, they're playing, they're here in the old city, Rechavot Yerushalayim, right exactly where it was, right, the Beit HaMikdash. And we're walking around over there, and I said, you have to appreciate, right in this area, probably used to stink. He's like, why? I'm like, when people wanted to bring a korban, and they lived in Netanya, right, they didn't schlep their korban. So right outside the Beit HaMikdash, this was a massive shuk. This was a massive place where you would buy your animals, and you'd buy your sheep, and you'd buy, it probably smelled, but they were used to having animals all over the place anyways. I said, and over there, the rabbis tell us was a mikvah. Because before you go to the Beit HaMikdash, you want to be before, right? Just going through Yerushalayim, understanding what was, is quite fascinating. But Rabbi Akiva, when everybody else sees the negative, he sees the positive. 2020, right? Pesach, everybody had plans, and unfortunately COVID, everybody was locked down. And someone sent me a clip from Rabbi Asher Weiss of Eretz Yisrael, And he said, if you look in the Haggadah, it says you have the different rabbis. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Tarfon, they were all sitting. Where were they? Bnei Brak. Baruch atah Adonai Melech haolam. Rabbi Weiss said, if you look at all the rabbis, Rabbi Akiva is the most junior. He's the youngest of all these rabbis. Who was the rabbi of Bnei Brak? Rabbi Akiva. Surely they should have been anywhere else except for in Bnei Brak. Why were they in Bnei Brak? And he explained, he said, we think of Pesach. What's Pesach? How is Pesach beautiful? You sit around the table with the family, Be'ezat Hashem, with good food, and tell over the stories, and you got to reenact the makot. It's funny, I do my best to try and make it exciting for the kids. So this year I was on a program. Sometimes you get a private room, sometimes not. I'm sitting there, and especially we were doing a second Seder. More than half the people weren't doing a second Seder. They were from Israel. They said it was cheaper for them to fly all the way to Greece than to stay in Israel and do a program there. That's how expensive the programs in Israel are. So I'm sitting there, and the first night I try and make it exciting for my kids. So I know Makkah of Dam, and I'm like, you have Ahmad, and you have Mustafa, and it's a really nice day outside, and they're getting ready to go swimming, and they're on the diving board, and they jump once, they jump twice, and they jump into the pool, and suddenly, blood is disgusting, and like all good Middle Eastern men, they start screaming at their wives, Fatima, what'd you do over here? Makarapo, right? Okay. My son, he's funny, he's 9 years old. The next day, I'm like, now it's each kid is going to say over a different makkah. You're in charge of Dam, it's right. And my son gets up there and he's like saying the same thing. He's like, and Ahmad's on the diving board and he starts screaming, skinny Tima. I'm like, that's not fat Tima. Right? This French guy, the next day says to me, he says, it was fascinating watching you with the seder and the props and the things and the frogs and the animals and the throwing the lice and whatever it is. He's like, but we were trying to figure out, what's this English word, Fatima? I'm like, that's not an English word. It's an Arabic female name. I don't know any other female Arabic names. I forgot. So we think that's the Seder. We think that's Pesach, with the props and the thing and the action and the beautiful and eating the matzah. That's not Pesach. Pesach is going to the Beit HaMikdash with millions of people, hearing the Levium sing, seeing people that you haven't seen in a few months since Sukkot, going over there, going to the Beit HaMikdash. You'd been there for Yom Kippur and you're waiting with anticipation as the red string around the Sela Azazel's neck and a switch, miraculously from red to white, signifying our forgiveness. Pesach's bringing a Korban Pesach, and being in the Chabura, being in the group, eating the Korban Pesach, right? We did a Chazak event, and I got Moshe Tats, who does the biltong. So he did the meat, and he got us this huge thing, and it was like on the rotisserie, and I'm like, dude, I'm calling dibs when Mashiach comes. I'm in your Chabura for the Korban Pesach. Like, this guy, it was amazing, delicious. That's Pesach. And now suddenly, the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, and all these great tzaddikim. But how are we supposed to celebrate? Well, what is Pesach? We don't have a Beit HaMikdash. They said, who do we need to go to understand what is Pesach and this new reality called no Beis HaMikdash? The only one who will be able to help us is Rabbi Akiva. Because they knew no matter what would Rabbi Akiva do? He'd be positive. He would see and explain to us, yes, that was then, this is now, this is how we now need to act. What are we celebrating? Rabbi Akiva has 24,000 students, every one of them dies. What are we celebrating on Lag Bomer? Imagine, if you will, you have somebody and they have a company. The richest person in the world, most famous person in the world. Everyone knows about them, their company's worth billions. Comes President Trump, makes some new rules, and now within a couple of months, this person lost everything. Billions and billions and billions. He went from having 20,000 people working for him to no people working for him. The guy spent his whole life into his 90s building up this company, and now, gone. Is this guy going to start up again? He's going to start a new company? No. I think I told you my father-in-law was walking in Deal, New Jersey, 2010, 2011. He says, you see this house? This guy, 2008, lost everything he owned. He lost over $30 million. Says he was so depressed and so embarrassed, he didn't leave his house for a year. Says, I came here to blow shofar for him. Rabbi Akiva, he doesn't say, obviously it's a sign from Hashem. It's not meant to be. What does he do? He perseveres. He starts again. And he used to have 24,000. How many does he have now? 5. He's got a small little table from Colosseums. from thousands. And he doesn't say, oh, it's not meant to be, Hashem sending me a sign. Right? If you would have came to me and said, Levi, there's a new yeshiva opening up. Oh, interesting. Who's the Rosh Yeshiva? Rabbi Akiva. The guy who all his students died. I enjoy that. And what happens? Rabbi Akiva finds 5 new students, convinces them to join his yeshiva, and all the Torah that we have is from there. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is the greatest of the 5, and we'll discuss Kabbalah in a minute. But ultimately, we're celebrating the fact that we even have Torah, because what did that come down to? Rabbi Akiva seeing the positive no matter the situation. And that's easier said than done. What's Pesach without a Beis HaMikdash? What did the rabbi was trying to say? What's Pesach when you can't sit there with your family if there's COVID? What is that? This is a new reality, and it'll be what it'll be for however long it's going to be, and we need to see the positive that Baruch Hashem, we're able to be here, to celebrate, to do the things we're able to do, and find ways. Rabbi Akiva always saw the positive, no matter the situation. That's something very important that we in 2025 can learn from Rabbi Akiva, that no matter what's happening in our lives, there's ups and downs, there's challenges, but ultimately, see the good. And a lot of times you have a simcha, and this one wants this, and one that. It's a simcha. Is it complicated? Yes, but ultimately, keep focused. It's about the simcha. During COVID, there was 15 people. Right? The person who lives next door, I was at a wedding. There was 10 men and a couple of bridesmaids, and 15 people. That was the whole wedding. Right? Some people found it easier. The cost was much cheaper. Right? But so worried. There's more. There's less. We don't know. We don't understand. We do what we can, but we always need to do our best to see the positive. Right? Now, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was given, to some extent, by Rabbi Akiva, the fundamentals and foundations of Kabbalah, but sitting in the cave learning for 13 years, he used to learn with Eliyahu Navi, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him certain siyata d'shmaya. So, I don't know much. I'm just repeating what I've seen from this book called Inner Space by Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan. Right? I only got up to page like 10. So there's a lot of deep stuff over there. Right? Kabbalah. What does the word Kabbalah mean? We know there's something called Pardes. What does Pardes mean? Orchard. But our rabbis tell us, what does Pardes stand for? Pshat, Remez, Rash, and Sod. Right? Sfarad is backwards. Sfaradim like to have the Sod first. Right? They're very into the Kabbalistic stuff. I would have thought called Sod, right? Secrets. Why is it called Kabbalah? So you open up the first Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, and what does it say? Moshe Kibel Torah Mesinai, and then what's the next words? Umisara liYoshua. There's a difference between Kabbalah and Misora, and then even there it says Moshe Kibel Torah Mesinai, Misara liYoshua, and then it doesn't say anything. It says Yoshua Zkenim Zkenim Neviim Zkenim. Once again, Misaru al Anshe Knesset Agdola. Zkenim Neviim Neviim Misaru al Anshe. There's Mesira. We're at Mesira. We got it. And to some extent, every generation gets a bit more diluted. But Moshe Kibel. Kabbalah means to connect to Hashem. Now you need to know everything. That's why they say you should only really start learning Kabbalah at the age of 40. It's not about 40 or 25 or 65. It's about, that's an age. You look in Pirkei Avot, discusses different ages, get different stages. 40 is a certain level of bina, of understanding. Right? 50 is etzah. You start giving advice. 16 is Zikna, what is exactly Zikna, and 80 is Givura. Each one has its different stage. But ultimately, I was teaching the boys, we were now in the 6th parak. We got to this Mishnah, towards the end of the 5th parak. And I think I might have mentioned here in the past, it's worth repeating. I was saying there's different stages of life. So you have the age of 5, what does the Mishnah say? Mikra. Right? You start learning Chumash. 10 is Mishnah. 13 is Bar Mitzvah, 18 is Chuppah, 20, right? Each, I said, every stage is 30 is Koach, and 40 is Binah, and 50 is Etzah. Every 10 years is almost a new phase of your life. I said, but in your teenage years, 10 is this, 13 is this, 15 is this, 18 is this. There's a lot more going on in just those teenage years. Every 2 years is like a new phase and a new stage, and you can't treat a 15-year-old the way you treat a 13-year-old, can't treat a 13-year-old the way you treat a 10-year-old, and 18 you can't be treated. Each one needs to be treated differently. Nowadays you have some kids that are 25 and they're really only like 15. And you have some kids that are, probably 30 and they're maybe now just getting ready to get married, even if they've been married. How ready are they really? Things are different nowadays to some extent. Well, life expectancy is different. But we see these different stages, different phases. What is Kabbalah? Kabbalah is Moshe Rabbeinu receives from Hashem 1,000,000% of the Torah, and understanding this, right? 40 is Binah. There's a certain level of understanding. Once you have to know everything. You can't, the Mishnah is saying, you can't learn Gemara until you know all of Mishnah. You can't learn Mishnah until you know all of Chumash and all of Tanakh, right? You have to know everything. You have to truly be able to, Kabbalah is to receive and truly be connected to Hashem. There's nothing in between. It's just you and Hashem. Right? Now, the Kabbalah was hidden for many years. Meaning, obviously, if it was given from Moshe and passed down, wasn't made up. But you had a few specific people, namely the prophets, that they were given the secrets of the Kabbalah. Right? Chazak writes about Maaseh Amir Kava, the creation, right? On this highest level. And it says that there were 4 big Tanaim, great Tzaddikim, that went in to understand, and they saw Maaseh Amir Kava, and one of them went crazy, and one of them went off the derech. Rabbi Akiva was able to handle it. There was very few people who could handle this Kabbalah that was passed down to very unique and specific people. It wasn't well known. And it was given over to Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, one of his many rabbis, was Rabbi Eliezer. And not a discussion for now. Rabbi Eliezer was put into Cherem. He was excommunicated. And on his deathbed, the tzaddikim, the Tanaim, all the rabbis went to visit him. And he said, I had so much Torah to pass on to you, and nobody came to learn from me except for Rabbi Akiva. And I taught, one of the many things I taught Rabbi Akiva was 300 different ways to grow courgettes through kishuf, through black magic. You have to know what it is to know how to fight it, and to know, that sounds insane to us. What does that even mean? Why do you need 300? Kabbalistic stuff is things that we can't begin to really understand. I think Rabbi Mansour says, if you understand it, it's not Kabbalah. You're dealing with concepts that are very hard. We'll do our best to try and make them as simple as possible, but ultimately, it was hidden, right? Even HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world. What is the Hebrew word for world? Olam. What is the root of the word olam, or where does the word olam come from? Ne'elam, right? To be hidden. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we'll get to, hides himself, if you will, in this world. Kabbalah was hidden right before the Romans started killing all the rabbis, or right when they started killing all the rabbis. The Chachamim understood, we need to write this down. We need to write this down. Hopefully it doesn't get into the wrong hands. We need to write this down. We have a book called Sefer HaYetzirah. So some say, who wrote Sefer HaYetzirah? Avraham Avinu. Others say, who wrote Sefer HaYetzirah? Rabbi Akiva. Why? Because it had to be written down. Otherwise it was going to be forgotten. We don't know if it's going to be able to pass down generation to generation. There's other couple of rabbis. Ishmael Kohen Gadol writes another couple of books. And then Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai writes the Zohar. We don't see any rabbis discussing Kabbalah in the Zohar. Maybe the earliest we see it is Nachmanides, the Ramban. Right? Some say that, when did it really become somewhat popular? When did we find it, really? Huh? I can't hear you. So the Arizal, it was, the Arizal, we'll get to it in a second, sort of gave us an understanding of the Zohar. It wasn't really discussed or printed or written down. We didn't have any copies till a person named Moshe Levy. Some say he's the one that wrote it, but he made it like, anyone who goes through it can tell you this was obviously written by Hashem, by Yochai, and at that time period it's consistent with the way he wrote things and the way he did things. But that's in Spain in the 1200s. Right? But even then you see a little bit, the Ramban, Nachmanides quoted his rabbi, things that are a little bit Kabbalistic. But till the Arizal, about 500 years ago.
Wasn't he put in Chayrim? It was, I forgot his name, it was somebody who had Misora from in the 1200s in Spain, and then he was put in Chayrim, and nobody talked about him until much later.
Right, Moshe Levy is the one, Moshe Levy, who sort of brought out and started printing or writing the Kabbalah, and they were saying, this is not, you're coming up with all this stuff, this is not Torah, if you will. It's Torah, but it's not meant to be learned by the masses, etc. Right? You have the Arizal and his generation, also the Ramak, Moshe Cordovero, they basically start explaining to us what it is. Even the Arizal, by the way, we don't have any actual writings from the Arizal. The only things we have written from the Arizal were written by his student, Reb Chaim Vital. Reb Chaim Vital, how long did he learn by the Arizal for? He learned by the Arizal for 2 years. It says right when he started teaching him, Reb Chaim Vital, he wasn't really getting it. So in Tveria, the Arizal takes him out on a little boat, they go into the Kinneret, and they stop at a certain spot, and the Arizal says, here, drink. And Reb Chaim Vital started drinking, and suddenly his mind opened up to understand all the secrets of Kabbalah. He says, what is this water? He says, this is the Be'er of Miriam. Right? In the desert, what they do for all those years, learning Torah. Well, how much can you learn? 40 years, and you have the best teacher ever. Moshe Levy, literally, Kabbala, Moshe Kibel. He understood it. What do they do? We don't even realize, right? I was giving a show this week. We might have mentioned as well last year. What are we mourning over? How long is the mourning over the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash? First and second Beit HaMikdash. How long was the mourning period? 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Rabbi Shimon Schwab, you'll also hear me quote. And they came to him and they said, how come in the former world, if you want to call it that, they don't really commemorate Yom HaShoah? 6 million Jews died. He himself was from Germany. What? And he says, we don't make new days of mourning. All the mourning is because there's no Beis HaMikdash. All the mourning we do in the 3 weeks. For the Holocaust, for the pogroms, for the Inquisition. It's all in the 3 weeks. We don't make new days. We're not on that level nowadays to make new days. That's what they felt. That's what he felt. Someone sent me a clip. They had this, I guess not from a very modern woman, asking this person, how come when they have the minute of silence in Israel, in the Haredi circles, they don't stop and show respect? Good question. So the guy said, it's very simple. This concept of moment of silence, where you just stand there and I guess reflect. So that happened after World War I. It's a British thing. It says, we don't believe that you just stop and do nothing. We believe the opposite. You do something. So if someone passes away in their memory, you go and you learn. You give tzedakah. You donate something. It's the opposite of standing still and doing nothing. We believe that you can raise the neshama by doing. So we don't believe in this stopping still. We believe you got to do. And you'll tell me it's a bit disrespectful, at least appreciate it. Okay. You know what I mean? But it's not coming from a bad place or looking to disrespect. It's coming from understanding that just stopping doesn't do anything for these souls. It's learning in their memory, and that actually does something. Right? The Reb Chaim Vital, he writes the Sifrei HaArizal because the Arizal used to come to him in his dream and teach him Torah. That's how we have a book called Etz Chaim. Now Etz Chaim gives us the fundamentals, right? Gives us the basics. Imagine, if you will, you're taught in school certain equations when it comes to science, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to know how to do any scientific experiments and create anything with the fact that you know that H2O is this and this thing, that you need to know more than that. Right? You have over there he discusses the Etz Chaim. It says Reb Chaim Vital, there's different elements and different levels to the Kabbalah. One level of Kabbalah is the concepts. Right? You have an astronaut, and we can learn about space. And we know in space there's no gravity. We know that in space you can't do certain things. We know that it's very nice that we know it. We know certain concepts, but we're not actually there doing anything. Astronauts know a lot more about space. Why? Because they're living it. That's actual. And they're going to have to go up to space and do certain things. We know certain things. The first level of Kabbalah is understanding sort of the different things. And there's different levels, and there's different universes, and there's different heavens, and there's all these different things, and there's different stages, and there's different emulations of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's very theoretical, but then there is understanding how to utilize that in our daily lives, right? There's how to put it into practice, and then there's what we would call almost magical Kabbalah, right? There's Kabbalah that people, nowadays you don't see it openly. Back in the day you saw a lot more. Like you had the Baba Sali. One of the more famous stories about the Baba Sali was this person, different people came to him and they were sick, and he had a bottle of arak, or maybe I think it was arak. Might have been vodka, but I think it was arak. And what does he do? He starts filling up for people, and there's almost this. The bottle's a small bottle. He's filling up cup after cup after cup after cup. But the bottle's only this big. How is he able to give every single person full cups? You're using Kabbalah. Why do you have to use it for that? How? What? He would write kamiot and write certain different amulets and stuff. Nowadays, our rabbis don't really believe in that. Rabbi Yaakov Hillel is a big Kabbalist, has a book called Faith and Folly in English. A small little book. Nowadays, we're not supposed to beat the system. If somebody is not able to get married, have children, struggling financially, whatever it is, you're not supposed to just go to a Kabbalist and get a kamiyah and get a bracha and sort of, we still get a bracha, don't get me wrong, but Hashem sending us messages. Our job is to, my Rebbe used to say, when something goes wrong in the house, what's the first thing people like to do? Check the mezuzahs. He says, 100% check the mezuzahs. But that's not the message Hashem's sending you. Hashem wants you to work on something, not just check your mezuzahs. Right? Now there are these stories. You have somebody who went to the rabbi and he says, I eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. I never get full. No matter how much I eat. And the rabbi looked at him and said, check your mezuzah. Right? And what happened? The sofer, by mistake, wrote, instead of v'achalta v'savata, said v'achalta v'achalta. Check the mezuzah. Nowadays it would be v'achalta manjaro, or whatever it might be, right? There are these things, but ultimately, nowadays they don't believe, the Chachamim don't believe in that the heebie-jeebie stuff, if you want to call it that, should be advertised. It's not how we live our lives. It's not what Hashem wants from us. But it is there. Right? Now, when discussing Kabbalah, part of it is we need to understand Hashem, which you can't really understand. And the way to understand Hashem is by looking at the world. Because if Hashem created a world for us to live in, it must be that He wants us to be in this world and to do things in this world. Right? You have somebody, they build a 50-bedroom mansion. Right? Money is unlimited. Build a 50-bedroom mansion with loads of food, amazing drinks. Are they doing that for themselves and just their family of 4 or 6 people? No. Why are you building a 50-bedroom mansion? Why are you stocking it with loads of food? What must be the person wants? He wants to have people come over. He wants to give people to eat, to drink. He wants to have a place for people to sleep. If Hashem created the universe and for us this world, what must be? Hashem wants us to tap in and to utilize it and to enjoy it and to connect to Him through this. Right? Sometimes I find it hard to read my handwriting. Right? Hashem wants us to connect. Now, if Hashem was here in all His glory, whatever that means, which we really can't really understand, it'd be too much for us. It'd be too much for us. There's a few specific times we discuss how Hashem came down. Pesach, Hashem b'chvodo ba'atzmo. Yom Kippur, Hashem is here. Right? Certain people, they can really feel closer to Hashem. At the end of Yom Kippur, right before the end of Ne'ilah, what do we say? Hashem hu Elokim, 7 times. Why do we say it 7 times? Hashem hu Elokim, Hashem. Because whatever this means, there's 7 heavens, and it's almost like Hashem's here, and each time you say Hashem Elokim, we're escorting Him back up another heaven. If Hashem was here constantly, it would be too overwhelming for us. We have coming up Shavuot, they discuss how Hashem spoke, and the people died. It was the connection, the true connection, hearing from Hashem, it's so overwhelming that we're not on the level, it's just, we wouldn't be able to survive. So Hashem made different barriers, if you want to call them that, and different things, and He said, through the world, connect. There's times it's easier to connect and it's harder to connect, but Hashem wants us to connect to Him and to be close to Him. Now, Hashem wants us to partake in this world. What's the ultimate enjoyment? And it's discussed at the beginning by the Ramchal, right? At the beginning of Mesilat Yesharim. What is Hashem and Derech Hashem? What does Hashem want us to do? Hashem wants us to enjoy this world. What's the ultimate enjoyment?
Serving Him. Emulating.
Connecting to Him. Being close to Him. There's good food, there's good drink, there's beautiful scenery and nice weather and amazing. But the ultimate simcha we have is from connecting to Hashem, being close to Hashem. What does that mean to be close to Hashem? How can we be close to Hashem? Right. Are the people in Israel closer to Hashem than we are? No, not necessarily. So what does it mean to be close to Hashem? And Chachamim explain based on different psukim and tehillim. It means to emulate Hashem. To be close to Hashem is to emulate Hashem. Mahu rachum, afata rachum. Mahu chanun, afata chanun. Right? You're getting a little bit Kabbalistic, but you have different names of Hashem, and the world was created with different names of Hashem. So the most powerful and the holiest name of Hashem to some extent is Yud and then Hey and Vav and Hey. And the rabbis tell us when somebody is giving tzedakah, they're connecting to the name of Hashem. How is giving tzedakah connecting to the name of Hashem? How is giving tzedakah Yud Kei Vav Kei? So they explain Kabbalistically. You have a coin. That's little. That's like the letter Yud. And then we know every letter has a numerical value. What's the numerical value of Hey? 5. That's the hand. So you take the Yud, and then you take the Hey, and then when the person stretches out their arm, what letter is that? That's the letter Vav. And then you have the poor person who, once again, what do? They stick out the Hey, and you're able to, in giving tzedakah, you're connecting to Yud Kei Vav Kei. Right? You're giving tzedakah, no, you're being godlike, and you're connecting literally to the name of Hashem. It's not by coincidence. Yud, and then Hey, and then Vav, and then Hey. Right? And Kabbalistically, they explain that existence is like the letter Yud. And they go through how just existence is the letter Yud. And then you have Hashem, obviously, en lo demuta guf, en lo guf. But for us to understand that Hashem has Hey. Hey can be a prefix or a suffix. When it's at the beginning of a word, it's about sort of like taking. Right? So you have Hey, our job is to take, and then you have Vav. Vav's a connecting letter. When Hashem is putting it out there and we grab on, we're connecting to Hashem. So you have Yud, which is existence, and you have the Vav, the Hey, which is us grabbing on and holding on, and then the Vav is connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and then the final Hey, when you have a Hey at the end of the word, what is that? That is feminine. Right? Because Hashem gives, and our job is to receive. Our job is, right, the men give and the women receive. When it comes to having a child, the man gives and the woman receives. The woman takes the little bit the man gives and turns it into something amazing. Right? We're over stereotyping. The man will go to work, make the money, give the wife, and then her job is to take that money. You can't eat money. You can't live on money. You need to have a place. You need to have a house. You need to have food. You need to have, clothing. You need to have all these things. The job of the woman is to take what the man gives and make it that much better and that much more useful. Right? There's an element of femininity in this letter Hey. So Hashem says, I'm giving you this existence. Yud and then Hey and Vav and Hey is Hashem taking the existence, partnering with us, that we then take this existence and life and utilize it. Obviously, everything is only because Hashem allows it to be. But the femininity of this letter Hey at the end, the culmination, and to some extent the most important, is taking existence and utilizing it. Right? The letter Hey, whenever it comes to, children. Right? A lot of times you see this letter Hey. Sarah wasn't able to have children. So what letter gets added to her name? Instead of a Yud, the letter Hey. Rachel wasn't able to have children. And whatever this means, she understood there wasn't a Hey in her name. So she wasn't able to change her name. So she takes Bilha. Right? Bilha has how many Heys in her name? 2. She has almost, if you will, an extra Hey that Rachel could then use. And through Bilha, Rachel's able to have a child. Right? People not able to adopt, surrogacy, whatever it might be. There's this letter Hey. It's not always you, but it's connected to you. That's what Rachel Imenu shows us. It might not be me, but this child is my child, even if I'm not the one to carry the child. It was through Bilha. She was in, but that's the letter Hey. You're getting into these deep Kabbalistic concepts of what it is, but that's what the Arizal says, that you have existence. Now we know that there's different worlds, right? There's also different elements to the neshama. What are the different elements to the neshama? So there's 5 parts to every soul. There's nefesh. Oh, so the common ones that people know are ruach, nefesh, and neshama. And the other 2 that aren't as well known, chaya and yechida. Right? Kaved and lev is already in the body. We're talking about the neshama. And he goes through over here again. Like I said, I only got up to page 10. Right? He goes through over here how they come back to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Right? Even the word Yud and then Hey and then Vav and Hey, you have this element of Haya Hoveh V'yiyeh. Hashem always was, is, and will be. Right? Kadosh Baruch Hu, everything that we are. But our job is to be close to Hashem. Our job is to emulate Hashem, to do our best to be godlike. And you ladies naturally are more godlike than men. Right? When a man says Shelo Asani Isha, it's because he has more mitzvot to do. Why does a man have more mitzvot to do? Because he has to work that much harder to be godlike, to emulate Hashem. Women naturally are more compassionate, or more thoughtful, or more caring. Men naturally. Yesterday I was dropping off my son, who's 2.5, at the playgroup, and she's like, we have to figure out together. I said, he's the youngest of 6, so he's used to getting, to some extent, from all his siblings whatever he wants. She's like, yeah, but he doesn't really want to share, and he throws a tantrum. I'm like, so let him throw a tantrum. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, let him. I said, he has to learn that it's not going to help. So when you have a kid, they're in the store, and they say to their mother, the kid's 4 years old, says, I want that ice pop, or I want that sweet. And the parent says, I'm very sorry, it's not kosher. Does the kid throw a tantrum? Why not? The kid knows no matter how much he cries and screams and kicks, he's not going to get it. It's not kosher. If a kid knows that tantrums won't help, they don't throw a tantrum. I said to him, let him learn. I get it. Let him throw a few tantrums and realize that it's not going to help. He has to share, or he's not going to get the thing, or he's going to get punished. He's like, I know, I feel so bad. I'm like, don't. It's easy as a guy to be like, who cares, right? Women naturally are more thoughtful, and more compassionate, and more caring. And you always have when the babies, you have to get him to sleep through the night, and the guy usually, in my experience, is like, let him cry, yes to no, right? And the mother's like, no, he's been crying for a half hour already, come on. I'll put him in the bed, right? No, let him cry, he has to learn. Every night you bring, the guy usually is the one saying, too bad, he has to learn a lesson, and the mother's the one that naturally, and it's supposed to be that way. Baruch Hashem, that's the way Hashem created it, that there has to be both the father and the mother in the house, right? They had the whole Black Lives Matter thing, and there was a few people saying if you actually cared about Black lives, you would fix the biggest problem. What was the biggest problem, or is the biggest problem? That in the average black home in America, I found the numbers shocking. Guess what percentage of black homes in America don't have a father? Over 70%. I think it was 71%. Like, so if you care, there's a reason that Hashem made, again, in the woke values, you don't need a man and a woman. It doesn't matter, right? Each one brings different elements, and if you want to get Kabbalistic, everything that Hashem gave, right? We're talking about feminine and masculine. It says that Yitzchak Avinu, I think it's the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, Yitzchak Avinu has the Akedah, and before the Akedah, Yitzchak Avinu has the neshama of a female, and after the Akedah, guy who went up to Shammai, he was there for a few years, whatever it might be, and then comes back down and he has the neshama of a male. What does that mean? He has the neshama of a female, and he has the neshama of a male. I didn't see anyone say this. My understanding would be that beforehand he was a receiver. His job was to be feminine, if you will, receive everything from Abraham Avinu, and learn everything and receive it. And now, all right, now after the Akedah, he's ready to be a father. He's ready to go and be a giver and be the one that's going to give and find others to teach Torah, to be able to inspire, to have children, find the Rivka, to then perpetuate and continue this Jewish legacy. But there's different elements, right? Chaya Yechidah can't be touched, no matter how many sins in the soul we have, whatever we do, that's untouchable. That can't be destroyed or ruined. But Ruach, Nefesh, Neshama is different parts of the soul, and each one has different functionality. And again, these are hard concepts for us to appreciate because we don't see them. The same way Hashem's here, but we're in the Olam. It's only, everything's hidden. We think we're seeing certain things, but we have no idea really what's going on out there. And again, like I said, it's only up to page 10, and he goes through over here all the different things. And we say HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're talking about emulating Hashem. He talks about the different universes, right? And Adam HaKadmon, Atzilut, Biri'ah, Yitzirah, Asirah, all the different worlds, right? Again, this is a book in English. It's not even like anybody could go to the store and buy this book. And there's different elements of the, right? You've heard of these different elements of the universe? Right? Olam HaAsiyah, Olam HaBiriyah, Olam HaAtzilut. That's what he's discussing over here. And then he goes through, after the universe is this Sefirot. Right? So certain ones we've heard of. We say every day in the davening. Right? About HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Vayivarech David, L'cha Hashem HaGidulah. Gidulah referring to Chesed. V'Hagvura. V'Atiferet. V'Anetzach. V'Ahod. Yichol B'Shlam V'Aretz L'cha Hashem HaMamlacha, which is kingship. Yichol B'Shlam V'Aretz is Yesod, is foundation. And then besides just those 7 that we know, there's also Keter, there's Chokhmah, there's Binah, right? And then you get to, what are those? We say them in the davening, Atachonim, but what is Keter exactly? What is Chokhmah? What's the difference between Chokhmah and Binah? And then it goes through over here, each chapter, the different things. There's Partsufim, right? It goes through over here, what we said before, Adam HaKatmon, Tzimtzum. Hashem only lets us exist in the world. Hashem is everything. Hashem is all of time and space, and then to be able to create the universe, Hashem was mitzamtzem. Hashem sort of shrunk himself, if you will. Right? I picture like you have a guy and they're trying to get by, and to be able to pass by, it's a very narrow space. What do? You sort of suck it in so that you can get by. Maybe you need to fit in a certain outfit. You gotta suck it in, and then you. That's how I picture HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Obviously, doesn't have a physicality, but for Hashem to create the world, he almost had to be like, all right, all of the universe. Hashem is everything that is time and space. And again, these things don't really make sense to us, but that to some extent was all revealed on Lag BaOmer. That was the day that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai passed down to his students all the stuff that he spent learning 15 years. What they do in the Midbar for 40 years, what were they learning all day, every day? It was all this. What are we mourning over? What are we mourning over? There's been many worse tragedies than 24,000 people dying.
potential to teach.
Oh, so we might have mentioned this. I'll tell you one Gemara, and this will help us understand what we're mourning over. The Gemara tells a story, I think it's a cool story, about Moshe Rabbeinu. He's up there in Shamayim 40 days and 40 nights. On top of certain letters is what's called tagim, crowns. Ashkenazim have like lines, Sfaradim have like lines going up on certain letters at the top of the lamed and the shin and whatever it is, and Ashkenazim have like blocks called tagim, crowns. So Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, what's the deal with all these crowns on top of certain letters? Hashem says, one day there's going to be a guy called Akiva ben Yosef who's able to look at each crown and learn out tele tilim, tens and hundreds of halachot from each crown. Moshe Rabbeinu says, that sounds pretty epic. Can I check this guy out? Says the Gemara, Hashem takes Moshe Rabbeinu, does some Back to the Future action, and puts him in the shiur of Rabbi Akiva. It doesn't say Back to the Future. Right? Puts him in the shiur of Rabbi Akiva. And Moshe Rabbeinu is sitting there, and Rabbi Akiva says, from this crown, we learn out all these things. And from this crown, we learn out all these halachot. And the Gemara says, Moshe is getting more distraught, and more distraught, because each time he's like, I didn't learn that out of there. Till one student says, well, where do we know this halacha? He says, oh, that we don't see from any crown or any, that's halacha le Moshe Sinai. And Moshe goes, that's right. Right? And Hashem sort of takes him back, and Moshe Rabbeinu says, why am I the guy giving the Torah, bringing down the Torah? Surely it should be this great Rabbi Akiva ben Yosef. And Hashem says, no, now's the time. If we didn't have this Gemara telling us you can learn stuff out of crowns, would we ever know that? Would you ever dream that you could learn stuff out of crowns? No, why would you? It's just the way Hashem did it. Rabbi Akiva takes 5 new students. Each student, he gave a certain element of Torah that was their expertise. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Kabbala. Rabbi Meir, Halacha. Right? Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai, Sifri, Tosefta. Those are the 5 he felt were most important for the perpetuation of Torah. But ultimately, it seems that each student had a certain thing. We said when it comes to Kabbalah, only a very few select people were taught the secrets. There's so many different elements of Torah. Rabbi Akiva had 24,000 students. It's possible that there's 24,000 different elements and secrets of Torah. This one got Kabbalah, this one got Halacha, this one got... But the crown, that died with Rabbi so-and-so. We're not mourning over the number 24,000. There's been many worse tragedies in Jewish history. What are we mourning over? The fact that there's 23,995 ways of connecting to Torah that we don't even know exist. Kabbalah, which the average person has no idea what. Sirafim, V'chayot HaKodesh, what's the difference between a saraf? Right, we say in the Haggadah, Ani v'lo malach, Ani v'lo saraf. Right, we say everything in the davening. Ofanim, what's ofanim? Chayot HaKodesh, what are these creations of holiness? We say these things in davening, we have no idea what we're talking about. We can't even begin to imagine. They give each other permission. What do you mean? They give all these different things, and there's demons, and there's good, and there's bad, and there's different levels. We mentioned Rabbi Yosef Karlin with the Magid. Magid is a certain level of angel. We have no idea what's going out there. The Gemara says if we were to really see, you look in a cemetery, you realize 99 out of 100 people died from Ayin Hara. We don't know what Ayin Hara is and how it works, and why. There's so much there we can't even begin. It died with the students of Rabbi Akiva, and even the Kabbalah that we have, it's from us, from the average person. It's olam, it's ne'elam, it's in the world. But we do our best to understand and appreciate that there's so much out there we don't understand. There's always more to learn. And there's going to be things we don't understand because Hashem does things in many ways. The greatest, biggest tzaddikim and Kabbalists that understand the secrets. In Israel, you have the Ayin Hara lady, right? You know the Ayin Hara lady? You go over there and she has this thing with the pot and it's boiling and there's metal in there. I don't even know, I've never been, but you know what I mean? Depending on how many bubbles show up, you know, do we understand these things? Right. I don't know if I say cynical, but I appreciate that I don't understand. That I have no idea. And if you do right, certain people, they're very into all natural things. They understand Hashem put into the world, and if you take these things, you don't need to take all these medicines, there's natural. It's true. Many of those things, they were passed down generation to generation, how to utilize them, and how to do certain things, and how to burn things in a certain way, and how to mix certain herbs. We don't understand these things. When it comes to Kabbalah and Serafim, and Kodesh and Chaya, Yechidah, and Ruach, and Nefesh, and Neshama, and Hashem, and there's all different elements, and what's the difference between Hod, right? What is Hod? What does that even mean? What's splendor? Right? Aharon HaKohen, splendor, Hod. Next week is the week of Hod. Right? What does that mean? What am I supposed to do in the week of Hod? Different than the week of Netzach. What's eternity? What am I supposed to be doing in the week of eternity? We throw these things around, and it's good that we have a certain very basic being able to repeat. Gevura, Netzach, Hod, Yisod. What's foundation? Oh, it's the week of foundation. Okay. Now I've got to work on what? We don't even know what that means. We need classes to understand these things, but just for us to appreciate. Today wasn't our typical class. Usually you walk out and say, okay, the rabbi spoke about this, I want to do that. We threw out a lot of different concepts, and like I said, I only got up to page 10. Right? There's so much out there. What is tzimtzum, and how did Hashem, what does it mean that Hashem, made himself smaller to create the universe and create the world, and what does that mean? There's so much more there. But it's just important for us to appreciate that, realize that. And when things happen in the world, both for good and for bad, we don't really understand what it is we're seeing. Hashem needs to be hidden. If he was here and we felt him, it would be too much. So Hashem gave us free will, but our job, what's the practical lesson we can walk away? Our job is to be close to Hashem and to emulate Hashem. To every time you give tzedakah, Yud Kei Vav Kei. Every time you're volunteering, Yud Kei Vav Kei. Every time you don't get angry, right? Every time you control yourself, you're being godlike. You have that givurah, the strength. It's not about givurah, doesn't mean big muscles. And tiferet, what is tiferet, right? Glory. What's glory? Right? We like to sing about the king as glorious. But what does that even mean? There's so much more out there that we need to learn, that we have to learn, and each person on their own level. But when it comes to Lag BaOmer, we're celebrating the perseverance of Rabbi Akiva, the fact that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was given the secrets of the Kabbalah, enhanced them, if you will. The Arizal came and reintroduced them and was able to help us to some extent. We have the book, he came back in a dream, special, Etz Chaim, which gave us certain fundamentals. And you have big tzaddikim that are able to look partzufim, able to look at people's faces and know stuff. I remember, I'll end with this. There was a student of ours, and he was in yeshiva, and he got kicked out of yeshiva. And it happened to be Min HaShamayim. I was there. And I meant to meet with the rabbi and the Rosh Yeshiva, and one of the rabbis said to me, there's no way, like I've never seen him so adamant, there's no way that he's going to accept this boy back into yeshiva. Right? And I sat down with the rabbi, and he said, don't waste your time. I look at his face. When I was younger, I learned too much Tsurata Partzuf. I look at his face and I can tell he's lying. Right? He comes and he says, I'm going to do that, and he's lying. Right? And I said, this Tsurata Partzuf happens to be, I said to the rabbi, I said, okay, no problem. You got to do what you got to do, I got to do what I got to do. Right? The boy was over here, and now he's grown tremendously. Is he doing this and this wrong? 1,000,000%. You tell me where we're going to take him, that he can still learn and grow as much as he will over here, no problem. But you have to tell me where we're going to go and where he can learn as much. Which other yeshiva do you think he'll learn like he learns over here? And the Rosh Yeshiva said, well, nowhere. I said, so that's your achrayut, that's your responsibility. Is he doing this wrong? Yes, we need to work on that. Is he going to lie to you? Probably. But wherever he goes, he's not going to learn anything and lie. So let's figure out how we can deal with the lying. But, you know what I mean? But there's Tsurata Partzuf. Certain Kabbalists are able to look and say, this one, she's a shin, and this one, the letter is a yud, and this one's a. I don't know what that means, because I'm not a Kabbalist. We keep it simple. But understanding and appreciating, Lag BaOmer is celebrating that we at least have the secrets, and you have certain people that are able to understand, and they're able to give brachot, and they're able to say certain things, and know certain things, and do certain things. I was Pesach in Crete, and they had Rabbi Pinto, Rav David Hanania Pinto was there. And someone said to me, they said, this couple, they went to the rabbi to get a bracha. And they mentioned the name of their child, and the rabbi said, how old is your child? They said, he's 2. He says, run back right now. So what? He says, run back to your villa right now. They said, no, run back now. It's freaky. They ran back to the villa. Their 2-year-old was about to fall into the pool. They shouldn't have left him. They thought the other kid was watching him, whatever it was. You know what I mean? But like, how did the rabbi, I don't know. We don't know. We don't understand. How did the rabbi know? Go back right now. The second run. They thought the other kid was watching. It happens. Right? The Baba Shra, there's so many tzaddikim. They understood how to tap into the kochot of the Kabbalah. They understood all the different worlds and why Hashem does what He does and how He does it. Now, most things can't be revealed. You have stories of people, they went to Reb Chaim Kanievsky and said, I was clinically dead for 7 minutes, and in Shamayim I saw this and I heard that. And what can I tell people? You can't tell people anything. Or you can only tell people this part of what you saw in Shamayim. Right? During COVID, Mo Garza. The only certain things he was able to repeat, certain things he wasn't. We have no idea what's going on there in Shamayim and which mitzvot it's meant to be hidden, because if it was so obvious and clear, we would live our lives differently. It's not meant to be that way. It's meant to be the challenge of trusting in Hashem, even though we can't see clearly what happens, when and how and why. But Lag BaOmer is when these secrets were revealed, and we're celebrating the perseverance of Rabbi Akiva. Our job is to persevere, no matter how challenging things are, to understand and appreciate. Our job is to be God-like, emulate Hashem. And if we do that, Be'ezat Hashem will be zocheh to Mashiach and be able to see all the secrets on the highest level. Amen.